You did this. I turned. We were standing graveside. The casket, a cheap pine box, was suspended over the raw, red clay. My sister, Clara, wasn't crying. Her face was a mask of pale, twisted hate. She pointed a trembling finger at my chest. He called you, she hissed, her voice low and sharp, cutting through the quiet shuffling of the other mourners. He always called you, and you let him die? You were never here. So his blood is on your hands, Julian. Hit like, subscribe for more betrayal stories, and comment your city or country. I didn't react. I just watched her. Clara, my little sister, now a thin, brittle woman I barely recognized. Her grief was real, but it was poisoned. Poisoned by years of resentment. She was right about one thing. I was never here. I was in deserts she'd never seen, in compounds she'd never heard of. I chose that life. And my father paid the price for my absence. The funeral was a small, pathetic affair. Maybe 15 people. A few old neighbors who looked terrified, whispering to each other. And, of course, Chief Grant. He stood at the back, under a large oak tree, arms crossed, sunglasses on. He wasn't mourning. He was observing. He was watching me. It was a message. I'm still here. This is still my town. I ignored him. I ignored Clara's sobs, which finally broke as they lowered the casket. I just stared at the hole in the ground. I felt nothing. No sadness. No anger. Just a deep, cold certainty. The patch in my pocket was a heavy, leathery weight against my thigh. The mission had started. Afterward, we were called to a small, dusty law office on Main Street. Amelia Brooke, attorney at law. The sign was faded. The office inside was all old wood and the smell of paper. The woman behind the desk, Amelia, was young, maybe early 30s. She looked exhausted. Her eyes were sharp, but there were dark circles under them. Mr. Julian, Miss Clara. Please, sit, she said, gesturing to 2 chairs. Clara sat, rigid, dabbing at her eyes with a balled-up tissue. I sat. The room was too warm. I am Amelia Brooke, she said, shuffling papers. I was your father's attorney. I want to offer my deepest condolences. Evan was a good man. Just get on with it, Clara muttered. Tell us what he left. What debt? Amelia flinched, but nodded. Of course. The reading of the last will and testament of Evan. It's very straightforward. He updated it just last month. She put on a pair of glasses and began to read in a flat monotone. To my daughter, Clara, I leave my personal savings account, totaling $4,112. May it help you find a new start. Clara's head snapped up. 4,000. That's it. He had more than that. The shop. Clara, please, Amelia said, holding up a hand. She continued. And to my son, Julian, I leave everything else. The room went silent. I could hear the wall clock ticking. Clara just stared. What? Amelia kept reading. I leave my house, its contents, and all associated properties, including Evan's auto and repair, and all business assets and all business debts, to my son, Julian. No, Clara whispered. No, that's not right. He hated you. You were gone. Clara, the will is notarized and valid, Amelia said softly. Clara shot out of her chair. He doesn't deserve it. He wasn't here. I was the one here. I was the one. I was the one dealing with everything. Dealing with what? I asked. My first words in the office. Clara's face went white. She looked from me to Amelia, then back to me. With his problems. His drinking. His debts. You just show up, the hero, and he gives you everything? He gave me the debt, Clara. The house is mortgaged to the hilt. The shop hasn't turned a profit in 3 years. He gave me a sinking ship. Then let it sink, she shrieked. Why do you care? You'll be gone in a week anyway. Back to playing soldier. Just sign it over to me. I can sell the land. Preston always wanted to buy the land. An interesting name. Preston. I filed it away. I'm not signing anything, I said. That's enough, Amelia said, her voice suddenly firm. She looked directly at me. There is one more thing. A personal addendum. Your father wrote a note, to be given only to you, Julian, upon his death. She slid a simple white envelope across the desk. It had my name on it, in my father's familiar, messy script. Clara looked like she'd been slapped. A note? For him. I picked it up. The envelope was thin. I turned it over. It was sealed. I looked at Clara, then at Amelia. I wasn't going to open it here. This meeting is over, I said, standing up. Julian, you can't just... Clara started. I walked out. I drove to the auto shop. It was dark, the open sign turned off. I used the key my father's lawyer had given me. The lock was stiff. The smell hit me first. Oil, gasoline, and decay. The place was a mess. Tools scattered. A car up on the lift, half repaired. Mail piled on the desk. I sat in my father's chair. It squeaked. The whole place was a testament to a man who had given up. Or a man who was pushed. I pulled out the envelope. My hands were steady. I tore it open. It was a single sheet of notebook paper. Julian, if you're reading this, I'm gone. Don't believe what they tell you. It wasn't an accident. It wasn't me. They're animals. They want the shop. They think it's worthless, but they want the land. They've been pushing me, threatening me. I tried to hold on. I tried to handle it. I know you've seen things, son. I know who you are. I know you'll see the truth of this. Don't let them take it. It's all we have left. Don't let them win, Julian. Don't let them win. Dad, I read it 3 times. My father knew. He knew he was going to die. He wasn't an addict. He wasn't a victim of an overdose. He was a man fighting a war he couldn't win, against an enemy he couldn't name. Don't let them take it. He wasn't talking about the shop. He was talking about our family, our name. He was talking about justice. This wasn't a will. It was a mission briefing. I folded the note, placed it in my pocket next to the bloody biker patch. I looked around the dark, greasy garage. This wasn't a burden. It was a base of operations. Chief Grant thought I was a grieving son. My sister thought I was a ghost. They were both wrong. I didn't sleep. Sleep was a luxury, a liability. Instead, I worked. I spent the next 2 days in the auto shop, and I did the one thing I knew would give me cover. I cleaned. I was no longer Julian, the grieving son. I was Julian, the new owner. I hauled bags of trash to the dumpster. I organized wrenches and sockets, lining them up on the pegboard. I wiped 20 years of grease from the counters. The neighbors watched. They'd drive by slow, see me in the bay, and then speed up. They saw a son taking over the family business. They were wrong. I wasn't cleaning. I was searching. With every greasy rag I threw out, I was taking inventory. With every drawer I emptied, I was looking for a second ledger, a hidden compartment, a key. An operator doesn't just look for clues. He maps the entire environment. My father's note said they wanted the land. Clara and Chief Grant both mentioned a man named Preston. The patch in my pocket said iron serpents. These were the pieces. I needed to see how they fit. On the 3rd day, I found it. Tucked under the liner of his main toolbox, I found a stack of notices. Not bills. Warnings. They were all from a local bar, the Forge. Scrawled on the bottom of the most recent one, in red ink, were 2 words, Victor's patience. The Forge. It was a start. I didn't go there. Not yet. You don't walk into the enemy's barracks. You set up a hide. The Forge was on the industrial side of town, a mile from the shop. It was a low, windowless building made of cinder blocks. Across the street was a 3-story abandoned textile mill, its windows all shattered. A perfect overwatch position. That night, I went to the 3rd floor of that mill. I set up in a dark corner where the shadows were deepest. I brought a thermal monocular, a high-zoom camera, and a notebook. And I waited. For 20 years, my job was patience. My job was watching a door for 72 hours, waiting for one man to walk out. This was easy. At 10 p.m., they started arriving. The bikes. Iron serpents. They parked out front, loud and arrogant. They were exactly what you'd expect. Leather, noise, and cheap beer. They were the muscle. The grunts. At 1:30 a.m., he showed up. He didn't ride a bike. He arrived in a new, black Dodge Ram. He was tall, dressed in a clean black button-down and jeans. He had presence. When he stepped out of the truck, the other bikers went quiet. They parted for him. This was Victor. He wasn't a brawler. He was a commander. He walked into the bar, and I felt the shift in energy even from across the street. I watched him for 2 hours. He never drank. He just talked. He'd pull one biker aside, then another, giving orders, collecting envelopes. Then, at 3:15 a.m., it happened. A Northwood County patrol car. It didn't pull into the lot. It just idled on the street, 20 yards away. Victor came out of the bar, alone. He walked to the patrol car. The driver's side window came down. I raised my camera. The zoom was good. The grainy, night vision image was unmistakable. Chief Grant. I watched him. He was smiling. Smiling. He took a thick envelope from Victor, folded it, and slipped it into his chest pocket. He said something, laughed, and then the patrol car pulled away. I had it. Visual confirmation. The local law wasn't just ignoring my father's murder. He was paid for it. I stayed until dawn. I had my link. Victor, the Serpents, and Grant. Now I needed to find Preston. I returned to the auto shop as the sun was coming up. I was exhausted, but the cold certainty was a fuel all its own. I was in the bay, supposedly checking the spark plugs on the half-repaired car, when the sound of gravel crunching made me look up. It was Grant's patrol car. He parked right in the bay entrance, blocking the light. He got out slowly, taking off his sunglasses. He wasn't the annoyed, lazy cop from my father's house. His eyes were small and hard. Working late, he said. It wasn't a question. Working early. I replied, wiping my hands on a rag. The bloody patch was in my jeans pocket. I could feel it, like a hot coal. My advice, he said, walking closer. He kicked at a loose tire. Nothing in this place is worth salvaging. It's a hole. The whole town's a hole. My father asked me to hold on to it. Grant's face tightened. Your father made some bad choices. He got in deep with people you don't want to know. I held his gaze. What people? He let out a short, cold laugh. Doesn't matter. They're gone. The case is closed, Julian. I filed the coroner's report this morning. Accidental overdose. A tragedy. That's not what I saw. I said, my voice quiet. The fake sympathy vanished. The mask was off. Grant took a step closer until he was right in my space. He was trying to intimidate me. You listen to me, son, he hissed, his voice dropping. You're a tourist here. I don't care what you did in the army. I don't care who you think you are. Here, you're just Evan's kid. And Evan's story is over. He poked me in the chest with a thick finger. You start digging. You start asking questions at bars, bothering people. You're going to end up just as accidental as he did. You understand me? I didn't move. I just looked at his finger on my chest. You think I'm lying? He sneered. Go ahead. Ask around. See who'll talk to you. There is no one in this town who will help you. You are alone. He stepped back. Sell the land. I hear Preston is offering a very fair price. Take the money. Take your sister. And go. Consider this your one and only warning. He turned, got back in his car, and drove away. I stood there for a long time, the smell of his exhaust filling the garage. He was wrong. I wasn't alone. I had 20 years of training. I had my father's last words. And I had a name. Preston. Grant had just confirmed my next target. I had a link. Victor, Grant, Preston. A chain of command. But it felt incomplete. Grant's warning was an intimidation tactic, but it was also a diversion. He wanted me focused on Preston, on the land. But my father was tortured. You don't torture a man to get him to sell land. You threaten him. You harass him. You don't break his hands. The violence was too personal, too extreme for a simple real estate deal. The overdose narrative, the planted needles. That was a cover story. Grant's warning about Preston felt like a second cover story, one designed for me. I went back to the auto shop, sitting in the dark, the air thick with the smell of old oil. I replayed my father's call. They're breaking my hands. And then I remembered the funeral. The people who weren't there. Daphne, my father's wife. His widow. She was 32. He was 62. They'd been married for 2 years. I'd met her once, a brief, awkward dinner where she'd barely spoken. She was quiet, pretty in a faded way, and she never, ever looked me in the eye. She wasn't at the funeral. She wasn't at the lawyer's office. A grieving widow doesn't just disappear. She was the missing piece. I still had the key to my father's house. I drove there, parking down the street, not in the driveway. I watched it for 30 minutes. No movement. No lights. Just Grant's accidental overdose tape, still flapping on the splintered door frame. I didn't go in the front. I went around the back. The back door was locked. I picked it in under 10 seconds. The house was cold, colder than it should have been. I moved through the kitchen into the living room. The bloodstains were still dark on the carpet by the recliner. The police investigation hadn't even bothered to clean the scene. I heard a sound, a small hiccup, from upstairs. I moved to the staircase, my footsteps silent. My training makes me a ghost when I want to be. I went up, one slow step at a time. The sound came from the master bedroom. A quiet, rhythmic sobbing. I pushed the door open. She was on the floor, in the corner, surrounded by suitcases. Daphne. She was wearing a pink bathrobe, her blonde hair a tangled mess. She was rocking back and forth, holding a small framed photo. When she saw me, she didn't scream. She inhaled, a sharp, terrified gasp, as if she'd been expecting a monster and one had finally arrived. Julian, she whispered, scrambling back against the wall. I was just packing. I'm leaving. I'll be gone. Where were you, Daphne? I kept my voice low. I didn't move from the doorway. I couldn't go. She was trembling, her eyes wide with panic. I couldn't. You couldn't go to his funeral. I loved him, she cried, a sudden, fierce defense. You don't know that. You don't know anything. You were never here. It was the same thing Clara had screamed. The family chorus. You were never here. I'm here now, I said. I took one step into the room. She flinched. I was at the house, Daphne. When he was after. Stop, she begged. I saw the room. I saw him. I took another step. And I heard the call. Her head snapped up. Her eyes, which had been darting around, focused on me. What call? He called me. Right before. Right during. I heard them. Daphne's face went from pale to the color of ash. She stopped crying. She just stopped. The silence in the room was absolute. They told me he died of an overdose, I said, walking slowly toward her. I crouched down, staying 5 feet away. I wasn't going to touch her. I didn't need to. Chief Grant said it was an accident, but that's not what I heard. I heard them breaking his hands. I heard them laughing. Daphne squeezed her eyes shut. She put her hands over her ears. No, please. Who were they, Daphne? I don't know. Who were they? Bikers, she screamed, dropping her hands. Just bikers. They were angry. They were. I don't know. The Iron Serpents, I said. It wasn't a question. She nodded, tears streaming down her face again. Yes. But it wasn't about the shop. It wasn't about whatever. It wasn't that. My blood went cold. What was it about? She looked at the suitcases. She looked at the door. She knew there was no way out. It was me, she whispered, her voice cracking. It was my fault. I waited. Silence is the most powerful tool in an interrogation. They will always fill it. I have a problem, she said, her voice so low I could barely hear. I like to play. The slots. Over in the next county. Just for fun. Go on. It stopped being fun. I lost. I lost big. I took money from the shop's register. Evan didn't know. I was going to pay it back. I needed to win. She was unraveling, the whole story pouring out. But I just lost more. You borrowed money. She nodded, sobbing. From a man. He runs a private game. He's very understanding. He gives credit. I I owed him. I owed him so much. What was his name, Daphne? Victor. The name hit me like a punch to the gut. Victor. The man in the black truck. The man who paid Chief Grant. My focus on Preston and the land. It was a complete misdirection. Grant didn't just tell me to look at Preston. He was hurting me that way. Because the truth was so much worse. Victor wanted his money, I said. He sent his friends. The serpents. They came here, to the shop. They were horrible to Evan. They threatened him. And he protected you. I said, the pieces clicking into place. He didn't know, she shrieked. He thought they were just trying to muscle him for protection money. He told them to get lost. He was so brave. He was trying to protect me. And the night they came here, that was for me, she whispered, her face collapsing in on itself. They weren't here for Evan. They were here for me. They said my time was up. They said Victor was disappointed. They came in. Evan was in his chair. He stood up. He grabbed a fireplace poker. He told them to get out of his house. He told them they weren't going to touch his wife. She was choking on the words. And they laughed. The big one, he grabbed the poker. And they tortured him. I finished, my voice like gravel. To make a point to you. They grabbed me, she said, her eyes vacant, seeing the memory. They held me. They made me watch. They said, this is what happens when you don't pay. This is the interest. And Evan he just kept yelling. Run, Daphne. Just run. She looked at me, her eyes dead. I didn't run. I just watched. And when they were done, they looked at me. And they told me to go to the kitchen. To get the kit from under the sink. The planted needles, I said. They said, Victor's patient. Just like you said. They said, Victor's patience has run out. And I was next. They told me I had 24 hours to get the full amount. Or they'd come back for me. And they left. And I locked myself in the bathroom. And I stayed there until I heard your truck. The first major betrayal. It wasn't the town. It wasn't a business rival. It was this woman. His wife. My father didn't die for his shop. He didn't die for his land. He died for her. He died protecting a secret that wasn't even his. He died because his wife was a gambling addict who borrowed money from a monster. I stood up. I looked down at her, a pathetic, broken woman, surrounded by her luggage. She wasn't a victim. She was the fuse. So you're running, I said. He'll kill me, Julian, she whimpered. Victor, he'll find me. He'll kill me. Yes, I said. He probably will. I turned and walked out of the room. Wait, she cried, scrambling to her feet. Wait, Julian, where are you going? What are you going to do? Help me, please. You're Delta Force, aren't you? Evan said. He said you were dangerous. You can stop them. I paused at the top of the stairs. I looked back at her. Evan was wrong. I said, my voice empty. I'm not dangerous. I'm just a son. At his father's house. I walked down the stairs, out the back door, and didn't look back. The mission had changed. It wasn't about land. It wasn't about justice. It was about a debt. And Victor was about to find out. I'm the one who collects. I left her there, sobbing in that cold house. I walked out into the night, the image of her face, her pathetic confession, burning in my mind. My father died for her. He died protecting a gambling addict who had betrayed him to a monster like Victor. I drove. I had no destination. I just drove. The cold certainty I'd felt before was gone, replaced by a hot, raw anger. It felt too simple, too messy. My training kicked in, cutting through the anger. Analyze the intel. Find the discrepancy. Daphne's story was emotional. It was real. I believed her. The debt was real. The torture was real. But it didn't fit. If the only motive was Daphne's gambling debt, why the elaborate cover-up? Why plant needles? Victor's men could have just made her disappear. Made both of them disappear. An enforcer like Victor, one who pays the chief of police, doesn't need to create a fake overdose narrative just to collect on a personal debt. It's too much exposure. And what about Preston? The name Clara and Grant both dropped. The man who wanted the land. Grant's warning was specific: sell the land. I hear Preston is offering a very fair price. Why would Grant be pushing a real estate deal for Preston if the murder was about Daphne's personal debt to Victor? The two motives were running on separate tracks. Daphne's debt, Victor's motive. The land, Preston's motive. My gut told me they weren't separate. They were connected. Grant's warning wasn't a diversion. It was a second objective. They were trying to accomplish two things at once: collect on a debt and acquire the land. I stopped the truck. I was outside the auto shop. The place was dark. My father's whole life was in that building. His secrets. Daphne's confession was one piece. The other piece was still in here. I went inside, locking the door behind me. I didn't turn on the lights. I used my flashlight, the narrow beam cutting through the shadows. I went to the small, greasy office in the back. I'd swept this room. I'd cleaned it. But I'd been looking for Daphne's secret. For needles. For bottles. I hadn't been looking for my father's. I tore the office apart. Not in anger. In precision. I checked under the desk. Pulled the drawers all the way out. Tapped the wall panels. Checked the air vents. Nothing. I looked at the old, metal safe in the corner. It was a relic, probably from the 1950s. I'd already opened it. It just had the business license and some old truck titles. Think, Julian. Where would a man who smells like grease, a man who trusts no one, hide his real life? My eyes landed on the car still up on the hydraulic lift. The one he'd been working on. I walked over to it. A 1970s Chevy. My flashlight beam played over the engine block. Too obvious. The interior. Too easy. The gas tank. I got a creeper and rolled under the car. I ran my hands along the fuel lines. And then I felt it. Tucked up on the chassis, right above the tank, taped to the undercarriage and caked in grime, was a small, oil-soaked notebook. I pulled it free. The electrical tape was stiff. I rolled out, stood up, and went back to the desk. I sat in my father's squeaky chair. The place was silent. I opened the book. It wasn't a business ledger. It was a life ledger. My father's familiar, messy script filled the pages. But it wasn't just numbers. It was code. A simple code, but one I recognized. He'd taught it to me when I was a kid, a spy game we used to play. A equals Z, B equals Y, C equals X. A simple substitution cipher. My hands were shaking. I grabbed a pen and a clean piece of paper. I started to translate. The first few pages were what I expected. Notes about the shop. SB order, 500. I translated it. HK Luvy, 500. Gibberish. I was doing it wrong. I looked at the page again. SB. He ran an auto shop. Spark plugs. WEF, 200. Oil filter. TR, 150. Tire rotation. It wasn't a letter cipher. It was a word cipher. The services were code for people. I went back through the pages. There was one name that appeared every single month, like clockwork. SB, 500. Spark plugs. SB. Serpents. My blood ran cold. $500. Every month. For a year. Then, 6 months ago, a new entry. OF, 300. Oil filter. WEF. Officer? No. I thought of the man I saw under the street light. Chief. OF equals Chief Grant. My father wasn't just a victim. He was being extorted. He was paying protection money to the Iron Serpents and the Chief of Police. I kept reading. The payments were regular. Then, 3 months ago, they stopped. And a new name appeared. Preston. Meeting. Land. No. My father had underlined the word no. The very next day, a new entry. SB payment, 2,000. The extortion had quadrupled. He'd refused to sell the land to Preston. And immediately, Victor and the Serpents had put the screws to him. Preston wasn't a separate motive. He was the source. He was the client. Victor was just the contractor. Grant was the cleanup. I turned the page. My father's handwriting was frantic. Daphne. Game. 10,000. Victor. I stopped. My breath caught in my chest. $10,000. I kept reading. Victor. Meeting. Your wife. Your land. Choose. I told him, go to hell. The final pieces clicked into place. This was the betrayal. This was the real story. Daphne's gambling debt wasn't the motive. It was the leverage. Preston wanted the land. My father refused. So Preston, who was already in league with Victor, had a new idea. He'd use Victor's muscle. Victor, knowing my father was already under his thumb, increased the payments. My father still wouldn't break. Then, they found Daphne. They found his wife's $10,000 debt. It was the perfect lever. They had him. They could threaten him with his business, or they could threaten him with his wife's secret and her life. They came to him with a final offer. Give us the land, and we'll forget your wife's debt. And my father, my stubborn, broken, brave old man, told them to go to hell. So they came to the house. They didn't come to collect on Daphne's debt. They came to break him. They came to torture him until he agreed to sign the land over to Preston. And when he still wouldn't break, they killed him. And Daphne? She was just collateral damage. An excuse. They used her to justify the violence. And then they planted the needles, using her addiction as the perfect, believable cover story for Grant's accidental overdose report. They had all played a part. Preston, the client. Victor, the muscle. Grant, the system. And Daphne. Daphne was the key. The one who handed them the weapon they needed to destroy him. I closed the book. My father hadn't died protecting his wife. He died protecting his land. His legacy. His name. I stood up. The anger was gone. The cold was back. Grant was right. I was alone. There was no one in this town who would help me. The entire system was rotten. I thought of the one person I'd met who seemed out of place. The one person who looked as tired and scared as my father must have been. Amelia Brooke, the lawyer. She was the only one not in this book. I had the truth. A greasy, coded notebook that laid out the entire conspiracy. Preston, Victor, Grant, Daphne. A neat little diagram of my father's destruction. But the notebook wasn't a weapon. It was a target. In my old life, this is when you'd hand the intel package to the A-team. You'd pass it up the chain. But here, I was the chain. And it was broken. Grant's warning echoed in my head. There is no one in this town who will help you. He was almost right. I drove back to Main Street. It was just after 9 p.m. The town was dead. The only light came from the bar on the corner and one single window on the second floor of the law building. Amelia Brooke's office. She was the only person left. The only name not in my father's ledger. She was either the last honest person in Northwood, or she was the most careful. I was betting on the latter. I parked a block away, in the shadow of the old post office. I went up the back stairs, the wooden steps groaning under my weight. The hallway smelled like dust and old carpet. Her door was locked. I didn't pick it. I knocked. The light inside went out. I heard the sound of a chair scraping, then footsteps. We're closed. Her voice came through the door, trembling. Amelia, I said, my voice low. It's Julian. I need to talk to you. About my father. A long, heavy silence. I heard the deadbolt slide back. The door opened a crack. She was silhouetted by the moonlight from her window. You shouldn't be here, Julian. No one should be seeing you here. That's why I came. She looked up and down the empty hallway, then pulled me inside and locked the deadbolt behind me. Her office was a mess. Not messy like work, but messy like panic. Stacks of files were piled on the floor. A half-packed cardboard box sat on her desk. You're leaving, I stated. I'm organizing. She lied, pushing her hair back. She was wearing the same clothes I'd seen her in 2 days ago. What do you want? You read the will, I said. You saw the clause. Don't let them take it. You knew what it meant. I'm an attorney, she snapped, her voice breaking. I read what's on the page. I don't interpret threats. It wasn't a threat. It was a plea. He was being extorted. Amelia's face crumpled. She backed up and sank into her chair. You need to go. You need to leave this town. I found his real ledger, I said, pulling the oil-soaked notebook from my jacket. I didn't hand it to her. I just laid it on the desk between us. He kept it in code. I translated it. Her eyes fixed on the notebook as if it were a snake. She didn't touch it. He was paying Victor, I said, and he was paying Chief Grant. And it all started when a man named Preston wanted his land. She closed her eyes. Oh, Evan, you stupid, brave old man. Were you in on it? I asked. My voice was flat, but the question hung in the air like an axe. Her eyes snapped open, and for the first time, I saw anger. And on it, she hissed. I'm the one who tried to stop it. I'm the one who filed the harassment complaints against Grant that disappeared from the county clerk's office. I'm the one who tried to file a restraining order for your father against Victor, and the judge laughed me out of his chambers. She stood up, her hands shaking. You come in here, the soldier, you have no idea. Then tell me. She walked to the window, looking down at the empty street. This isn't a town, Julian. It's a company. And Preston is the CEO. He's been buying up land for years, quietly. But your father's auto shop is geographically significant. What does that mean? It's about the highway. The state is putting in a new freeway exchange. The plans are secret, but Preston knows. He's on the zoning board. That little piece of land your father's shop sits on, it's going to be the only off-ramp for 30 miles. It's not just land. It's a gold mine. Gas stations, hotels. Preston wants it all. So he hired Victor. Hired? Amelia laughed, a bitter, dry sound. Victor isn't for hire. They're partners. Preston handles the clean side, the money, the lawyers, the judges. Victor and his serpents, they're the human resources department. They handle the negotiations that won't go smoothly. And Grant, Victor put him in office. He's not a cop. He's a security guard. He's there to clean up the messes and make sure no one from the outside starts looking too close. It was all there. The entire rotten structure. Your father, she continued, her voice softening. He was the last holdout. The last piece of the puzzle. Preston offered him money. A lot of money. Your father told him to. Well, he told him to go to hell. So Preston sent Victor. And Victor found Daphne. He found her debt. It was the perfect lever. But your father, he still wouldn't sign. He wouldn't sell. Even when I told him he should. Even when I told him it wasn't worth his life. She turned from the window. I told him to run. I told him to take Daphne and just disappear. But he said, a man's got to hold on to something. He was talking about his name. The same words Daphne had used. The same words my father had written. So what do? I asked. I held up the notebook. I take this to the state police. Amelia just looked at me. A deep, profound pity in her eyes. And tell them what? The local chief of police murdered your father? The one whose official report says accidental overdose? The report that I'm sure is backed by a grieving widow's testimony? You have no standing, Julian. You have a notebook written in a code you translated. It's not evidence. It's a suicide note. She walked to her desk and picked up the small cardboard box. My family has had a hardware store in this town for 3 generations, she said quietly, her back to me. Last winter, 2 of Victor's men came in. They bought a hammer. They broke my father's right hand with it. Right there on the counter. Called it a demonstration of product defects. She finally turned to face me. That was their warning. For me. To stop filing papers. To stop helping people like your father. To pack. She dropped the box on the desk. There is no legal path here. There is no justice. There is only Preston and Victor and Grant. You can't win. You can only leave. I'm not leaving, I said. Then you're a fool, she whispered. Just like your father. You have this evidence? This truth. It's worthless. It's a target on your back. They will find it, and they will kill you for it. Just like they killed him. I took the ledger off her desk. She was right. This book, This evidence, it was useless in a courtroom. The system was designed to protect them. I couldn't go through the system. Where are you going? She asked, a new panic in her voice. I was already at the door. I unlocked the deadbolt. You said it yourself, Amelia. I'm not a lawyer. I left her in the dark. I walked down the stairs, the notebook heavy in my jacket. I had the truth. I had the motive. I had the names. I couldn't give it to the police. I couldn't give it to a lawyer. So I was going to give it to the only person left. I was going to give it to them. Amelia was gone. I knew it before I even saw her office. Her words hung in the air. You can't win. You can only leave. She took her own advice. It didn't matter. She was right. The ledger in my pocket was worthless. The law was a locked door. My father's coded messages were just stories for a dead man. I stood in the dark alley behind her office. The system wasn't just broken. It was a machine built to protect them. You can't ask a machine to investigate its own gears. So, you break the machine. For 20 years, my job was to dismantle networks, to find the nodes, listen to the traffic, and wait for the one critical piece of intel that would let us tear the whole thing down. I wasn't a grieving son anymore. I wasn't a mechanic. Grant, Victor, and Preston, they weren't criminals. They were a hostile cell. And I was back on the job. I went back to the auto shop. It was no longer my father's grave. It was my forward operating base. I needed tools, not wrenches and sockets. I needed the tools from my old life. I went into the shop's office. In a locked desk drawer, I found an old satellite phone my father kept for emergencies. I took it to the middle of the garage, far from any potential listening devices. I powered it on. I made one call, a number I hadn't dialed in 2 years. It rang once. This is a non-secure line, a flat voice said. This is Julian. I need a hobbyist kit for an electronics project, I said. My voice was sterile. Audio, video, and tracking. High sensitivity. Micro-sized. The full catalog. Shipping address. I gave him a P.O. box in a town 50 miles away. Billing. The usual account, I said. It's a long way from your old projects, Julian. The voice, Felix, was the closest thing I had to a friend. It's a personal project, I said. Those are the worst kind. The line clicked. The package would arrive in 12 hours. While I waited, I prepped. I became a ghost in my own town. I didn't drive my truck. I walked. I moved through alleys, over rooftops. I observed. I mapped their entire lives. Target 1, Chief Grant. The cleaner. He was sloppy. A creature of habit. He worked 8 to 5, took lunch at 12:15 at the town diner, and always parked his patrol car in the same spot at the end of the street. He liked the corner booth. He always sat facing the door. Target 2, Victor. The muscle. He was smarter. He slept at the forge, in a reinforced room above the bar. He never left his black Ram truck unattended for more than a few minutes. He was paranoid. Good. Paranoid people create routines to feel safe. Target 3, Preston. The client. He was invisible. He lived in a gated community 20 miles out of town. He never came to the forge. He never met Grant. He was insulated. The package arrived. I picked it up. A simple cardboard box full of climbing gear. Under a false bottom was my new arsenal. Tiny cameras, listening devices no bigger than a grain of rice, magnetic GPS trackers. That night, the hunt began. I started with Grant. It was 12:30 p.m. He was in the diner. I saw him through the window, eating his burger. I had maybe 10 minutes. I walked down the street, casual. No one looks twice at a man in a work jacket. I didn't even pause as I passed his patrol car. My hand, holding a small magnetic device, dropped to my side. I slapped it high up under the chassis, on the frame, right below the driver's seat. A high-gain audio bug and a GPS tracker. Total time, 2 seconds. I kept walking. Next was Victor. This was harder. I waited until 3 a.m. The forge was dark. The bikes were gone. Only his black Ram was parked out back, right under a security camera. He thought the camera was security. I saw it as a tool. It had a blind spot. A perfect, triangular shadow right under the rear bumper. I moved from the alley, staying in the dark. I didn't crawl. I flowed. I was just another shadow. I reached the truck. I placed the second GPS tracker on the axle. Then, I placed a directional mic inside the plastic of the wheel well, aimed at the driver's side door. I'd hear every call he made with the window down. But I needed his meetings. I looked at the bar. Cinder block. Steel door. But the roof had a ventilation unit for the kitchen. I went up the fire escape of the building next door. I crossed the roof. The vent cover was held on by 4 simple screws. I had them out in 30 seconds. I dropped into the greasy, dark kitchen. Silent. The air was thick with the smell of stale beer. I moved into the main bar. I saw the back room. Victor's office. The door was locked. I picked it in 5 seconds. It was a simple room. A desk. A chair. A safe. I didn't care about the safe. I needed his words. I found the smoke detector on the ceiling. I popped the cover and placed my smallest, battery-powered video/audio bug inside. The pinhole lens aimed directly at the chair behind the desk. I was out the way I came in. Total time in the building, for minutes. I went back to the auto shop. I sat in my father's chair, in the dark. I opened my laptop. I put in an earpiece. And I listened. The auto shop was no longer a garage. It was a listening post. For 48 hours, I listened to static. I listened to Grant pulling people over for broken taillights. I listened to Victor's bikers talking about nothing. And then, on the 3rd night, I got it. My earpiece crackled. It was the bug from Victor's truck. He was driving. He was on the phone. "I'm telling you, it's a problem," Victor growled. "It's handled," a new voice said. Smooth. Educated. My breath caught. I didn't recognize the voice. It wasn't Grant. "Your handling is what got us in this mess," Victor said. "The soldier boy is still in town. He was at the lawyer's office. And now, the lawyer is gone. She ran. That doesn't feel handled to me. Preston." "Preston." I hit record. "Calm down, Victor." Preston's voice was like ice. "She was a loose end. Her running is a good thing. It leaves only one. The son. He's not his father," Victor warned. "He's quiet. I don't like it. He's been in that garage for days. He hasn't talked to anyone." "Good. Let him grieve," Preston said. "He'll get bored. He'll leave. But if he doesn't, if he even looks the wrong way, you know what to do." "And Grant?" "Grant is a tool," Preston said. "He's taken care of. He's worried about the sister." "Clara." "The sister?" Victor scoffed. "Why?" "She's been running her mouth," Preston said. "Telling people she should have inherited. That the soldier doesn't deserve it. She's making noise. And noise attracts attention." A cold pause. "You want me to talk to her?" Victor asked. My blood turned to ice. "No," Preston said. "Let's be surgical. I'll handle the sister. You just keep an eye on the soldier. And Victor? It's time to start the next phase. Start the foreclosure proceedings on the shop. It's time to take it." The call ended. I sat in the dark. They weren't just watching me. They were protecting me. They were afraid of Clara. And they were about to make their move. Not on me. On my sister. My blood ran cold. The recording clicked off, but Preston's voice echoed in the silence of the auto shop. "I'll handle the sister. Clara." My entire focus, my entire operation, had been aimed at them. Preston, Victor, Grant. I'd seen them as the enemy. But Clara, she was just Clara. Angry, resentful, a civilian. And now, she was a target. Preston, a man who had my father tortured to death, was going to handle her. My instincts screamed. Despite the years of silence, despite the venom she spat at me at the funeral, she was my sister. She was blood. I was out of the chair and moving. I left the surveillance feed open, the audio still piping into my laptop, but I was done listening for now. I was done being reactive. I grabbed my keys and a small go bag from my old life. It held a compact first aid kit, a pair of binoculars, and a new, clean burner phone. I also grabbed one of the audio bugs I had left, a small, magnetic puck. I didn't know where she lived. After our mother died, she'd bounced around. I had one place to start. The last bar I saw her in, years ago, on a failed trip home. The Crow's Nest. A dive bar on the edge of town. I drove, keeping my headlights off until I was a block away from the shop. I scanned every mirror, every shadow. I was looking for Victor's Ram, for Grant's patrol car. Nothing. The streets were dead. The Crow's Nest had a few cars in the lot. I parked in the dark, across the street, and I waited. I scanned the entrance. I didn't have to wait long. At 11:15 p.m., she stumbled out. She was alone, and she was drunk. She fumbled with her keys, dropped them, and let out a string of angry, slurred curses. She got into her battered blue sedan and sat there for a long minute, her head on the steering wheel. She was an easy target. I got out of my truck. I didn't run. I just walked, my footsteps silent. I moved up behind her car, staying in the blind spot. She wouldn't see me, but as I got closer, I saw she wasn't alone. A car I didn't recognize, a dark, expensive-looking sedan, was parked in the shadows at the far end of the lot. Its lights were off. It was just watching her. This was it. Preston's handler. My mission changed. This wasn't a rescue. It was an opportunity. Clara started her car. She pulled out of the lot, her tires squealing. The dark sedan waited 3 seconds, then pulled out after her, its movements smooth and professional. I was right behind them. I stayed back half a mile, my lights dimmed. They weren't taking her to an alley. They were driving out of town, toward the high-end, gated community. Preston's neighborhood. But they didn't go to the gates. Clara pulled over at a small, scenic overlook. A place where teenagers parked. It was desolate. She got out of her car, slamming the door. The dark sedan pulled up 20 feet away. A man got out. He wasn't big or scary. He was in his 50s, wearing a polo shirt and slacks. He looked like a lawyer, or a banker. He looked like Preston. It was Preston. I'd only seen him in grainy surveillance photos. But this was him. The client. The CEO. He wasn't sending a handler. He was handling it himself. I killed my engine and my lights, parking on the gravel shoulder, hidden by a line of pine trees. I was too far for the audio bug. I grabbed the binoculars. I saw Clara. She was animated, gesturing wildly. Preston stood there, hands in his pockets, perfectly calm. I needed the audio. I got out of my truck, grabbing the puck-sized bug. I didn't go near the road. I slipped into the woods, moving in a wide, dark arc. I was downwind. They'd never hear me. I moved from tree to tree until I was just 30 feet behind Preston, concealed by a large oak. Clara's voice was sharp, cutting through the night air. "Call this handled," she slurred. But her voice was full of anger, not fear. "You call this a solution? He's still here. The soldier is still here." My blood froze. This wasn't a threat. Preston's voice was calm, like a father scolding a child. "Clara, we had an agreement. You provide information. You get compensated. Your noise is not part of the agreement." "My noise," she shrieked, taking a step toward him. "I'm the one who told you about Daphne. I'm the one who told you she was siphoning money from the shop. I'm the one who told you Victor could use that. I gave you the leverage, Preston." I couldn't breathe. The woods were spinning. She told them. "You did." Preston agreed, his voice placating. "And you were paid for that information. Handsomely." "Not enough," Clara yelled. "Not after what you did. You weren't supposed to kill him. You were supposed to scare him. You were supposed to get him to sign the papers, and I'd get my cut when you sold the land." This was the twist. The second, deeper, sicker betrayal. Daphne was the key. But Clara was the one who gave them the key. She'd sold out our father. Not just for safety. For a payday. "Your father was stubborn," Preston said, his voice turning cold. "A foolish, sentimental old man. He made his choice. And now, you're making yours." I want what I'm owed," Clara said, her voice dropping. The drunken slur was gone. This was business. "What you're owed." Preston let out a small laugh. You're owed silence. You're a liability, Clara. You're the daughter. Your connection to him. Your grief. It's all very inconvenient. Especially now that your brother is here. I can handle Julian, she stammered. No, Preston said. You can't. You're a mess. You've done your part. He reached into his jacket. My hand went to my side. But he didn't pull a weapon. He pulled out a thick, white envelope. This, he said, is your final payment. This is for you to be quiet. This is for you to take a long, long vacation. And if you ever speak my name or Victor's name or anything about this to anyone, the vacation becomes permanent. Do you understand me? Clara looked at the envelope. Her hand trembled as she reached for it. She took it. She took the money. She tucked it into her purse. And Julian? I told you. Preston said, turning to walk back to his car. We'll handle the soldier. He's just like his father. He'll learn. I stood in the darkness, my feet rooted to the ground. I wasn't watching a target anymore. I was watching my sister, my father's other child. She had just taken blood money. She had been a willing, active part in the conspiracy that led to our father's torture and death. The entire time, the funeral, the lawyer's office, her grief, it was a lie. Her anger at me wasn't just resentment. It was guilt. It was fear. Fear that I'd find out the truth. Preston drove away. Clara stood there for a moment. Then she scrambled back to her car and peeled out, heading in the opposite direction. I didn't move. I just stood there, in the dark. I had come for a fight, for justice, for revenge. But this was rot. A rot that started in my own home. I finally walked back to my truck. I didn't have to plant the bug. I didn't need it. Preston was wrong. I wasn't just like my father. My father was a brave man who died to protect his name. I was a son who now had to burn his own family to the ground to get justice for him. And I had the one thing they never counted on. I had the recording of their entire conversation, caught on the high-gain directional mic I'd had in my hand the whole time. I drove back to the auto shop. I didn't speed. I didn't break any laws. I moved with a cold, terrifying calm. The recording from the overlook played back in my head. Clara's voice. I'm the one who told you about Daphne. Preston's voice. Your father was stubborn. My own sister. My own blood. She hadn't just watched the house burn. She'd handed them the matches. This was the end. The anger was gone. The grief was gone. There was nothing left but the mission. I walked into the dark garage, the smell of old grease and my father's failure hanging in the air. I sat at my laptop, my listening post. I wasn't a son. I wasn't a brother. I was just the man who had the evidence. And I had everything. I plugged in the high-gain directional mic. I saved the audio file from the overlook. I named it Confession. Then, I started to build the package. I pulled the audio from Grant's patrol car, the file where he's talking to Victor, confirming the overdose report is filed and asking about his payment. I pulled the video from Victor's office, the footage of him discussing how to handle the lawyer, Amelia, and complaining about the soldier boy. I pulled the audio from Victor's truck, the call with Preston, where they identified Clara as a loose end and a liability. I scanned every page of my father's coded ledger. I wrote a new text document. It wasn't a letter. It was a situation report. A sitrep. Subject, Operation Northwood. Hostile cell, Preston, client/planner motive. Land acquisition for highway development. Victor, enforcer/partner Iron Serpents. Handles extortion, violence. Grant, asset/cleanup Northwood chief of police. Manages cover-up, suppresses investigation. Internal assets, compromised Clara, informant/blood provided key leverage, Daphne's debt, in exchange for payment. See attached, confession.wave. Daphne, leverage/fuse gambling addiction used as pretext for initial contact and murder cover story. I listed the timeline. The extortion, the refusal, the murder, the cover-up. I attached the audio files, the video, the scanned images of the ledger, and the simple cipher key. It was a perfect, airtight, undeniable case. It was the kind of package you drop on a table that ends careers and starts wars. But Amelia was right. I couldn't give it to anyone in this state. Preston's influence was too deep. I picked up the satellite phone. I made the same call. "This is a non-secure line," the flat voice of Felix answered. "I know," I said. "This isn't a hobbyist project. I have a finished package. Domestic. It's heavy. It involves a serving chief of police, conspiracy, RICO, and murder." A long silence on the line. "You know we don't handle domestic," Felix said, his voice cold. "I know. I'm not asking you to handle it. I'm asking you to put it on the right desk. The one no one can touch. The one that doesn't care about local politics. The one that brings its own army." Another pause. Longer this time. That's a bell you can't unring, Julian." "I know. And you?" "I'm a ghost," I said. "I'm just the one who found the intel." I heard the click of a keyboard. "You have 30 minutes. A link is being sent to your device. It's a one-time use, encrypted server. Upload your package. It will be routed to the appropriate federal task force. After that, this number will no longer be in service." And we never had this conversation. "Understood." The line went dead. A moment later, a text arrived on the satellite phone. A long, complex URL. I opened a secure browser. I dragged all the files into the upload window. The ledger, Grant's audio, Victor's video, and finally, confession.wave. I clicked upload. A progress bar appeared. 10%, 40%, 70%. I looked around the dark garage. My father's whole life. The tools on the wall. The car on the lift. All of it, just over. File upload complete. Server will now self-destruct. The window closed. The link was dead. I was done. I methodically destroyed my equipment. I snapped the SIM card from the burner phone. I put the audio bugs, the cameras, and the laptop's hard drive into a metal bucket. I doused them in gasoline from the shop's canister. I took the bucket out back, to the old burn barrel my father used. I lit a match. The plastic and electronics caught, melting into a black, toxic slag. I watched it burn. I watched my old life, my old skills, turn to ash. I went back inside. I sat in my father's chair. The shop was silent. The whole town was silent. For an hour, I just sat. There was nothing left to do. No one left to fight. No one left to save. And then I heard it. At first, it was just a low vibration. A distant hum. But it wasn't the sound of a single car. It wasn't the rumble of a biker. It was sirens. Not the single, sad wail of Grant's patrol car. This was a chorus. A dozen sirens, all moving fast, all coming from the outside, coming from the highway. I stood up and walked to the big bay door. I didn't open it. I just looked through the small, greasy window. I saw them. Flashing lights. Red and blue. So many. They weren't stopping at the police station. They were splitting off. One group of black SUVs, federal plates, was heading toward the industrial park, toward the forge. Another group was heading toward the gated community, toward Preston. And a third group was coming right down my street. They weren't coming for me. They pulled up, lights flashing, right in front of Chief Grant's house, 3 doors down. The raid was on. The feds were here. The machine was in motion. I didn't move. I stood by that greasy window for hours, watching the sun come up. The blue and red lights had carved up the darkness, and now, in the gray morning light, the town of Northwood was a different place. The air felt lighter. The silence wasn't fear anymore. It was shock. I turned on the small, flickering TV in the corner of the office. It was already the lead story on the national news. A massive, pre-dawn federal raid. The anchorwoman was saying, her voice crisp. Federal agents, citing the RICO Act, have arrested 32 individuals across 3 states, including prominent businessman Oliver Preston. They showed a picture of Preston, not the calm, polo shirt-wearing man I'd seen. This was a grainy mugshot. And, in a move that has stunned the local community, the entire command of the Northwood Police Department, including Chief Grant. There was footage. Grant, in his undershirt, hands cuffed behind his back, being pushed into a black SUV. His face was a mask of pure, surprised terror. The raids also targeted the headquarters of the Iron Serpents Motorcycle Club, a group the FBI has now labeled a violent criminal enterprise. Victor. They showed him, too. He wasn't arrogant. He wasn't in command. He was on his knees on the pavement outside the forge, his hands on his head. I had done it. I had pulled the pin. The package I sent, it wasn't a tip. It was a kill order. They were all gone. I was the only one who knew the whole truth. The feds had their multi-state enterprise. They had no idea it was all brought down by a dead man's coded notebook and a son who knew how to listen. I was a ghost. My mission was over. I made a pot of coffee, my father's old machine wheezing and sputtering. As I was pouring a cup, a sound. A frantic, scratching knock at the shop's side door. I opened it. It was Daphne. She looked like she hadn't slept in a week. Her eyes were wide, darting back and forth from my face to the street. "They're gone," she whispered. The sirens. They took everyone. I saw them take Victor. Did you? I just looked at her. "What's going to happen to me?" she cried, her voice cracking. "The feds, will they know what I?" She was the fuse, the key, the leverage. And now, she was just a loose end. I didn't say anything. I walked back to my desk, took a plain white envelope from a drawer, and walked back. I handed it to her. She opened it. It was cash, $5,000, and a one-way bus ticket to Los Angeles, leaving in 1 hour. She looked up at me, confused. I don't. "My father died protecting you, Daphne," I said, my voice empty. "He died for a secret that wasn't his. I don't know if that was brave or if it was foolish, but he did it." I looked at her, this woman who had cost him his life. "He's gone. I'm gone. You're the only one left. So go, and don't waste it. Don't let him have died for nothing." She started to cry, to sob, to thank me. "Go," I said, my voice hard. "Now, don't look back." She clutched the envelope and she ran. She didn't look back. One loose end tied. There was only one left. I got in my truck. I didn't drive to the police station. I didn't drive to Preston's empty mansion. I drove to the cheap apartment complex on the other side of the tracks. I drove to Clara's. I didn't knock. The door was unlocked. The place was a disaster. Drawers pulled out. Clothes everywhere. A half-packed suitcase on the bed. She was frantic. She was panicking. When she saw me, she screamed, "Julian, they're here. The feds. They're arresting everyone. We have to go. We have to run." She grabbed my arm. Her grip was like a claw. "You," I said, my voice quiet, "aren't going anywhere." What are you talking about?" "Julian, they're going to think we were involved." "They won't think I was involved," I said, pulling my arm free. "But you're right. They should be looking for you." Her face went from panic to confusion. What does that mean?" I didn't answer. I just pulled the small audio recorder from my pocket, the one from the overlook. I hit play. Her own voice filled the tiny, messy apartment. "I'm the one who told you about Daphne. I'm the one who told you Victor could use that. I gave you the leverage, Preston." Clara's face went white. Not pale. White. The blood drained from it. Her knees buckled. She didn't fall. She just sank, holding onto the bed. "No," she whispered. "No. Julian, you don't understand. I was scared. I needed the money. He left me with nothing. He gave you everything. He gave me dead," I said, my voice dead. "He gave me a dying shop. He gave me a mission. And you gave them the knife. You helped them put it in his back. I didn't know they would kill him," she shrieked. I swear. I just wanted my share." "His share," I said, "was a broken body. His hands, his face. That was your share, Clara. That's what you bought." I stopped the recording. I looked at my sister. My sister. She was pathetic. A weak, greedy, terrified woman. The feds. She whispered, her eyes pleading. Are you going to? I tossed the recorder onto the bed. No, I said. They don't want you. They want monsters. You're just this. I turned to leave. Julian, she cried, scrambling after me. Wait. Don't leave me. Please. I'm your sister. I stopped at the door. I looked back at her one last time. No, I said. You're just the last ghost in a haunted house. You don't get the feds. You don't get jail. You get this. You get to live, knowing what you did. You get to wake up every day and remember. I walked out the door and left her there, alone with the truth. My phone rang. A number I didn't recognize. I answered. Julian. The voice was weak. Scared. Amelia. I heard the news, she said. Preston. Grant. They're gone. It's safe to come home, I said. What are you going to do? I looked at the for sale sign that was still on my father's lawn. I'm leaving, I said. I'm signing the shop. The land. All of it. I'm signing it over to the town. You can be the executor. Turn it into a park. A library. I don't care. Just make it something he wouldn't have been ashamed of. Julian. Goodbye, Amelia. I hung up. I drove. I didn't drive out of town. Not yet. I drove to the cemetery. The sun was warm now. It was a beautiful day. I walked over the grass to his grave. The cheap pine box was covered in fresh dirt. I stood there for a long time. I did it, Dad, I whispered. They're gone. Preston. Victor. Grant. All of them. I reached into my pocket. I pulled out the single, bloody, iron serpent's patch. And I pulled out the key to the auto shop. I didn't bury the patch. I didn't desecrate his grave. I dropped the key on the fresh dirt. It's over, I said. It's done. You can rest. I turned. I walked away. I didn't look back. I got in my truck. I put it in gear. And I drove. I didn't know where I was going. I just knew. I was finally free. Story is finished. This was an intense one. Thank you for following Julian's path of revenge all the way to the end. If you felt that chill run down your spine, and you believe that true betrayal needs true justice, hit that like button and subscribe to Betrayal Stories Lab. We're a family here, and your support is what keeps these stories alive. Now, for my question, when he left that key, did Julian leave a part of his father, or did he finally free himself? Let me know what you think in the comments. And I want to know, what kind of stories do you want to see next? More quiet revenge? More family drama? Do you like the betrayals that come from strangers, or the ones that come from inside the house? Your comments guide what I write. Also, let us know what city or country you're watching from. I'll see you on the next one. Until then, stay safe and watch your back.